Hey guys, welcome to our full series review of Kamen Rider Geo! As always, I'm your host, Frozen Stratos. Here with me today we have...
Cinder Blaze.
My dude, welcome back. Yeah, we finished up the series, barring the movie, the finale movie. We haven't seen that yet, so maybe that'll color our opinion. Same with the Hyper Battle DVD, or the other thing that is supposed to come out, so maybe those will have more content, but as it stands, we're going to be reviewing the movie in its, or the show in its entirety so far for like the American audience. And I gotta say, like, just overall, plain thoughts. I'm glad I watched it. I had fun, but it's not great.
Yeah, like this was definitely like a really fun anniversary series. Like it did struggle a lot in the beginning in figuring out what it wanted to do, but like once it kind of found its like pacing, it was really fun. Like if you're a fan of like the new Heisei writers, you're gonna have a blast, or even for some of the older Heisei writers, like you're gonna have a blast when they kind of like pay homage to some of those writers. And
Yeah.
But,
And like it kind of sucked for the writers who got their time to shine when the show didn't know what they wanted to do with the anniversary aspect, because I feel like for a majority of the beginning of it, the show was fighting between trying to have its own story and trying to be an anniversary series. When they dropped all pretenses of trying to be a like its own show and decided, hey, we're just gonna do anniversary stuff. If we happen to have plot in there, that's fine. You know.
yeah.
And you know, episode to episode, the plot didn't really move anywhere too interesting or so. Like it took the most obvious steps and did them very slowly. But the anniversary stuff, if you've been watching Kamen Rider, you know it's pretty fun.
Yeah. Like it's not like that doesn't, come with, some fault or some drawbacks, because like when they did decide to commit to doing full anniversary series, they sidelined the plot so hard that it really bit them in the butt in the finale. But just kind of like going off of like towards like the beginning, I remember like for some of the writers like X8, even for like Build, even though he was like the first writer, and like Gaim, some of the more recent Kamen writers, I would think like some of the more popular ones as well, because like those three are kind of iconic. But
Yeah.
those are definitely like episodes where Geo was definitely the priority. It's like, you guys can help, but like Geo has to do Geo things. And at the time being, we're like, that's good, because we don't want like the old writers to take over the show.
Right.
But then, like over the course of the series, like the show wasn't doing anything. So we're just like, oh well, now you're bringing these writers to just not do anything. When like the show isn't doing anything, so like at least bring them to do something of of use. Like I remember like was it Agito's episode, right? Like that was like a really good like two-parter.
Oh heck yeah. Like it almost got me to start watching Agito and definitely consider doing like a Toki turn back thing for it. But and again, it was at that point where they decided, okay, well, instead of trying to do something new and different with what we want to do, let's just do what basically everyone thought we were setting out to do, and just having adventures with the writers again. And it was a good time. And like, I really wish they would have acknowledged that the timelines of every single writer were different before. Like, we're all branch timelines and have now merged together. I really wish they would have said something about that earlier, because then that would have made a lot more questionable things forgivable. Like, really, it was the only solution to a very messy question, and it didn't really solve all the problems, but it solved enough of them to where I was like, okay, that's fine. And you would have had a lot more goodwill early on had you done something like that,
Yeah, if they just like helped explain a little bit earlier, because I feel like we got way too many answers in the last 3 episodes of the series, which could have helped like a lot earlier. Because like a lot of the time travel shenanigans, like at a certain point, they start making much sense. Like stop following their own rules, and that like, they didn't have to like finish them off in like the original like suit. Like after they got like their level 2 forms, just didn't even give a shit anymore.
I mean, I feel like that does sort of follow the rules, just because like everything above the 2 power level is able to just outright get rid of them, and they stuck consistently with that.
Yeah.
Because you never saw base form Geo or a different form, like different rider take down a rider,
Yeah. But just kind of like, I feel like they've kind of had like some missteps like earlier though, because I know like when we kind of like were in the middle of this series, they stopped like caring because we'd have like a bunch of like the older riders kind of come out of nowhere, and then they would just like beat them with whatever form that they felt like using that episode. So it got a little muddled, but it wasn't like anything too serious. So I'm not gonna like super dwell on it. But shoot, what do you want to like tackle? Like you want to tackle like the plot or the?
Well, I just want to sort of give an overarching thing of like, I imagine that an anniversary show, like most anniversary shows, aren't probably positioned to do well most of the time, in that it requires a lot of schedules lining up with people who would potentially come back, and like that means that you either have to write ahead of time and get things wrong when you can't get people back, like the right people back, or write things on the fly and just haphazardly structure things together. So they were really painted into a corner, and I just want to say that with the challenges that they have presented, they put out a fine product, like enjoyable enough at times, like really enjoyable at times. So I still appreciate the sort of work that goes into at least scheduling and putting it all together.
Yeah, like this is a very ambitious project. You can just consider like all of the actors that they would have to like gather for this. Like these aren't just extras. They're treated as extras, but they ain't just extras.
They're expensive extras. I feel like the biggest sort of what is it, like the biggest sort of thing that was indicative of that, I guess, idea that you're not getting everyone back and you got to be ready to work on the fly was the movie. The movie with Den-O in it instead of Kamen Rider Double, because I heard through the pipeline that it was supposed to be Double that came back instead of Den-O. That's how he got the double ride watch, and that's why the show didn't acknowledge that Den-O, he had already met Den-O. It's because it was supposed to be a double film, but then they were like, oh wait, hold on, we got Ryotaro back, so we gotta move everything around. Fix it all. I don't know.
Yeah, and also, there's like way too many writers. They kind of like have them all, fit neatly in this show. So the fact that they got as many as they did, like I'm kind of sad because like Double is one of my favorite writers, but you know what? Like he's not necessary. I feel like the most necessary writers are the ones that time travel themselves, because they would be butting heads with you like at one point. Although like towards the end, because they were like on different worlds, maybe it doesn't line up as well. But like whatever, it's a time travel series anyways. Just let them kind of like mess around with Den-O when he's time traveling. We had like Kamen Rider, what was it, Aqua also coming back. So
unfortunately, I mean, fortunately for me, for like a split second, and then I realized, oh no, he doesn't belong here. I just killed a bug. So I don't know. I'm
Decade.
Oh yeah, he's there. But like I'm sad for what could have been, but I'm happy with what I got. Like it was perfectly serviceable. Like the fact that it was any amount of enjoyable to me is a testament to how hard the people behind the scenes work. So I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, like if you were expecting like the show to like hit its ceiling, just like imagine it, like getting like all the actors for like all the Kamen Riders, like even for like one scene or something, it's just like near impossible. Like just like don't even like think that's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
And they did pretty well. Like with the
did.
writers that we did get, they've had some pretty badass moments, and like I feel like Gio himself, like he's definitely like a solid Kamen Rider. Like he definitely reminded me of, like a lot of Double, where like or not Double of Drive, where like the early show was kind of garbage, but like he definitely solidified himself as a Kamen Rider towards the end of the series because he just like kind of manned up in his own way.
Yeah. And like, I mean, I guess let's dive into characters for a little bit and talk a little bit about Gio himself since we're already doing it. I liked him. I at the end of it, because like at the beginning he felt sort of stupid unintentionally, but then the show sort of like I don't know if it was the show or a realization on my part, but when the show started becoming framed around, or at least the comedy was framed around his stupidity, it really endeared him to me. And he's just a really nice guy who's trying to do the right thing and is pretty stupid sometimes, but he's lovable.
Yeah, and I think like that was kind of like highlighted in like the first episode where he kind of had the crossover with Build.
Yeah,
because like Build is kind of like that arrogant genius, and when he sees Gio, he just kind of like has that smile because it reminds him of Cross. So.
And I mean, on top of that, when he did use the build powers, like he didn't have math floating around him. He had like an equation I should have learned in the 4th grade. This, that, and something I forgot, and like I don't know, just everything around him, sort of I guess signaled that he was kind of a lovable oaf sort of thing, and yeah, I genuinely appreciated that up until the end.
Yeah, and he's the type of character that you would probably want because his job for the entire series was to collect the ride watches from all the riders. Like, like he had to do that. That's why Schwartz wasn't able to like do it himself. He kind of relied on setting him up to do that for him. And with a personality like that, he was definitely like a catalyst for like many different personality types. So he meshed well with like most of the writers.
Yeah, definitely. Like I feel like on screen there wasn't any writer who I thought, didn't compliment, that Gio didn't compliment.
Yeah.
So I don't know, and I guess, do we really need to talk about his motivation, because it didn't seem necessary. It didn't seem to factor in as much. Like the plot pretended that it was important, but really it just never happened to factor in.
Yeah, it was more of a plot point anyways. It was just that Schwartz kind of implanted that idea into him.
Yeah.
And it just kind of like developed and honestly became like his dream,
I mean, and it was definitely weird him meeting himself and having that not line up in any. I feel like that was the absolute weakest part of his character, like giving him a set path and then watch us meander around and pretend to get him to that moment, like, and see time changing but him still staying the same for some reason. Like, it didn't quite work.
Yeah, like I kind of forget that Omagio is still Sogo, so like when you kind of bring in that aspect of his character, is definitely like one of the weakest parts. And the reason like we didn't really like rag on it too much was because it was such like an end game thing that like up until like the finale, we just kind of assumed that the show would kind of take care of it. And
Mhm.
it did in its own way, but in a way that was really unsatisfactory.
Yeah,
Like
but I feel like that's just indicative of the direction they decided to go. They decided to push the plot aside and do anniversary, anniversary, anniversary,
yeah,
which I like coming out of the finale. I guess we're getting more into plot. We'll talk about it later, but oh man, there was a point. Oh yeah, about the connection between him and Geo. Um, I I thought the Ryuki episode was really good at being both a Geo episode and a an anniversary episode because it used aspects of uh, uh, Ryuki, as in like the mirror world and the people connected to it, and they didn't have the Ryuki powers because in his show they were erased, so they had to use the mirror version of those powers, the mirror another version, and he went inside the mirror world and sort of confronted himself and like we were given the inner thoughts that I feel like we should have had the whole time of like you just want to use these people or like you just want to gain power and be a king and all that stuff. And I feel like that context to his character was necessary for me to rationalize that Sogo and Omagio were the same person.
yeah,
Um and I feel like up until then we hadn't seen anything to sort of hint that he'd turn bad. And I feel like the I feel like what the show didn't actually say, it just hinted at, or at least was really bad at like conveying it to. No, I guess it wasn't bad at conveying it, but like giving Sogo friends was what made him not turn into Omagio.
yeah.
I feel like that aspect could have been played up a lot more.
Yeah, they probably didn't want to bog down the series with that type of depressing stuff, anyways, because it feels like the Omagio path would be a really dark path. And when we did kind of see it at the very end, like all of his friends died by the time he became Omagio. Like he was real pissed off, and if it wasn't for like the bonds that he created, he wouldn't have like destroyed and reset the world
Mm-hmm.
or whatever else he did. Like I kind of do wish that they played up like the threat of him becoming Omagio, because one thing that was really annoying me in the beginning was like Gabe's being like, "Oh, this guy's become Omagio. This guy's become Omagio." It was like, what part of his personality right now makes it feel like he's gonna become Omagio? And there's like absolutely no signs pointing towards it, basically. And
Yeah.
there were like snippets of it where like we had like probably 1 or 2 episodes, honestly, where he's like kind of close because like we kind of see like the darker aspects of Sogo's personality when he's kind of like thinking about doing his own selfish things,
Mm-hmm.
and like as you mentioned with the Ryuki episode, but they kind of like gloss past it. I remember in like some of the other episodes when they're talking about him becoming a king, it's just like, oh, you got to be it for good reasons and just reasons, and it's like I'm pretty sure Soko's kind of like already like going on that path, but
Mm-hmm.
you gotta like you gotta scare me, like when
Yeah.
Gaze is like warning the entire audience like of what this dude, he's like a freaking bunny. Like he's not gonna hurt
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess that could lead us into talking about Gates, um, secondary rider that technically showed up first. Um, yeah, for me, he rides that same path of drive where didn't like it at the beginning and then good at the end. Like they, not drive the character, drive the show. Um,
Yeah,
he when he was being really wishy-washy about whether he'd kill Geo or not, like just make a decision and stick with it. Uh it got kind of annoying, especially since the show decided to meander on what they wanted to do with him for a while, and like it was just the same shtick over and over again. Uh
yeah,
and I feel like the show, like if it wasn't Gates, then they gave it to a different character, like Tsukiyomi, to be skeptical of him, and then they both went back on the same side. Like the path their characters took was really annoying, but in the end, I think what cemented it was when Geo was facing down Oma Geo, or no, another Geo 2, and he was trying to re-recruit Gates. The talk that they had together was really touching.
Yeah.
And I wish there was more time we had with them being friends.
Yeah, like I still like appreciate the character. He did bring out some like the best moments from Geo, and for a secondary writer, that's like one of the best aspects you can have.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, his interactions with Sogo at the very beginning were very repetitive, and I think they were played for more of a comedic purpose because like he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill you," and then he just like eats breakfast with them like immediately after, and he is probably the most consistent in actually finishing his food because like Sogo and Tsukiyomi just like walk the hell out like consistently. So I think he has some like good cred with like the uncle and stuff because he actually eats the food. So I do appreciate Gaze for that, you know, making the uncle's efforts worthwhile and all that. And then once he got like his first power up and was actually like somewhat stronger than Geo, I was like, oh, that's pretty neat. Like that there's an alternate timeline where he becomes like the savior, which is like the counterpart for Oma Geo. So like that he might actually be of like equal standing. And like that's kind of how like they played it out to be. Like he's the one who has powers to defeat Oma Geo, but the second he gets like Geo 2 and or it was probably like after that when he gets his like final form basically, he gets outclassed so hard that it's not even like
Trinity, because he didn't necessarily get outclassed. He just got out of control of his suit.
Yeah,
that was it. Like,
but like even like when they were fighting enemies, like Gase honestly couldn't like put a dent in him. And I feel like that's one like the pitfalls of his character towards the end, where he just kind of lost a lot of relevancy outside of Geo development. Like when it came to the plot, aside from like villain of the week shenanigans, but the greater plot just kind of like lost all momentum going into the finale.
Yeah.
So he just kind of like
remember when Goretsu and Shippu like harmed him to use, and then they just left that alone. Remember when it didn't matter anymore?
Yeah, he got stronger, so it's fine.
Yeah. So I feel like it'd be a good idea to talk about them as a pair. So Tsukiyomi, she was there, and then she became a rider at the end, just so that they could give us a premium Bandai set.
It was legit just for a toy. I hate that form for being so cool yet only useful as a toy. Didn't really have any moments in the series.
She had less than a minute each episode in that suit.
Yeah. And
maybe in totality.
Yeah, and like most of that's kind of like a duplicate, from the two episodes, like the henshin scene. Yeah.
Yeah. What a waste, man.
Yeah.
But I mean, like a waste in that her utility as a rider was not used to its fullest, and that her character was most of the time just there. I did like how she played off of Sogo some of the time.
I feel like yeah, like it was decent at times, but I feel like for me, her character was just like critical to Gaze's character in the beginning because she just like made his character logical in a way. Like if she wasn't there and Gaze was saying the things that he was saying, it would make no sense for him to be living there. But she was just kind of like calming him down, just kind of like tying him, putting the leash on him, so he wouldn't just like bite Geo's head off in his sleep, like. And that's kind of like how the relationship has been for the entire series up until like kind of accepts Gaze or accepts Geo.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I really wish there was more to say about her. Even her connection to the big bad was it comes a point where we know that there's a plot and we know that she factors in, but like it matters so little that I barely want to like talk about it in the review.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it didn't factor into the show. It just wasted time.
Yeah, and like I feel like when they did start hinting at those plot secrets, like except like the first couple of episodes where they barely gave us anything. I think it was like right towards when they were hinting the relationship between Schwartz and Tsukiyomi. I don't think I wanted to know about it because I knew whatever it would be awful. Like it would be something that they just have to like no one asked for them to be related. Like who cares? Like and what like value does it add to the show? And it's like, oh well, Schwartz is doing this whole thing because he wants more power than his sister, and it's like, what?
I mean, it lines up with his sort of demeanor throughout the show, and I guess I want to talk about Waz first. So
I'm
we'll
not done with Tsukiyomi yet.
Okay, all right.
One last thing I want to add about her character for the first 45 episodes of the series. I've talked so much crap about her, just not doing anything and just kind of witnessing the show as part of the cast. Like, should be running from scene to scene just to watch and react to the show with us, the audience. And I found that to be kind of adorable, but kind of annoying because she was part of the freaking show and she just wasn't allowed to do anything like really relevant besides telling Gaze to not kill Geo, which he obviously could not do from episode 1. And you know, like aside from some minor things where she's like, "Oh, let me go keep track of so and so in time," like, oh, she also had time stopping powers, which
at some point, yeah.
Yeah, but let's not talk about that until Schwartz.
Yeah. So Waz. I loved Waz. Everyone loves Waz. I'm pretty sure it's not groundbreaking to say Waz was a great character. Not necessarily had great motivations, but was really fun just to watch. Like the character and the actor just worked, and there's no. I don't know anyone that doesn't like Waz, really.
Yeah, he was just like entertaining.
Yeah,
he fit like the premise of the show. You know, if Sogo's like this, you know, supreme like being at the very end of the series, of course he's gonna have someone like Waz, you know, just kind of like singing his praises. And like the fact that he just kind of like travels in time, just kind of like does his things, like, oh shit, this is like my master. I'm gonna go and you know help him out when he's doing whatever the hell he's doing.
But like it didn't help, you know, it didn't help the idea that Geo was becoming Oma Geo. For Waz to be around, like we didn't know whether he wanted Geo to become Oma Geo or if he wanted to stay regular Geo. Like I couldn't tell if he wanted him to be evil or good, and he was just there to help out.
Like for me, I felt like Waz just wanted him to obtain all the ride watches because in doing so, he would obtain the power of Oma Geo, and he feels like as long as that prerequisite is like met, then he can worry about him, you know, becoming like Oma Geo.
Oh, okay. So it was like just make sure he becomes Oma Geo, and then we can realign time from there.
Yeah, because like he was still like helping like Gaze and you know Geo get all the ride watches, but once he starts noticing things, like he keeps tabs on it. He tries to like change his path, but he still is like very. He's very hesitant when he like actually does like anything direct. You know, when he's like coordinating with the time jackers and stuff, he's like he still kind of like respects Oma Geo. He doesn't want to like mess with his timeline too much because he's like his follower. He's like that's not his place, so to speak. But if things look a little bit too dire, he will like push his hand a little bit. But he's only done like a few times in the series that I felt like it was a perfect amount for his character. You know?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I kind of see what you're saying. And then like him suiting up after the White Waz incident. I don't even know if we need to talk about White Waz. Do we?
Like because we already talked about like gays and like the gays revive stuff.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, like we talked about the plot that he was relevant to, and
yeah, like
that's really all he factored into.
yeah, it was kind of neat that he had his own, henshin device in that timeline, and that our was just kind of like took at the very end. That was very cheeky of him, but that whole plot was just kind of like weird because gays was also very weird at around that time, so it's just not as
Mostly because he relinquished his power and he was like, I'm hoping for the future that you guys create. And what it seemed like was Waz was there to create Omagio and that was it. Like, how could he look forward to that? I don't know.
I don't know. That was in that awkward time when they just pulled writers out of their butt, basically, with the future writers. So, and once they stopped doing that, it felt a little bit weird because I expected more of them.
The future writers just didn't factor in, at all. Like, sure, we had some fun time. Like, I really like Kikai, like a lot. Like, Kikai's one of my favorites. And it was a neat thing in concept, but once we got around to needing an upgrade for Waz, we're like, well, I guess we'll just shoot this guy out of a pocket of space-time and say he's a writer. He's gonna toss CGI at people, and then that's it. He dies.
Yeah, it's funny how that's all those power-ups came from. Like, basically writers that are outside of the timeline.
I mean, no, like, I feel like they did at least a good job of giving Waz consistent-ish powers, where, like, his powers came from writers that shouldn't exist, and he kept them, and same with Ginga. Technically, those powers shouldn't exist because he came through a hole of space and time and should not have existed in that timeline, really.
Yeah.
So, in that regard, they were consistent. It's just that a lot of the plots that the future writers were attached to weren't great.
Yeah. I also feel like Gates' powers are also based off of those another writers, not another writers, but the future writers.
I mean, technically,
because like there's like 3 of them that you need to do to fit the puzzle, and whatever. Yeah. Let's not stick to that too much.
Yeah. Oh man, that gets weirder when you realize that each writer creates its own world.
It's weird, but I don't think like every writer makes their own world. Only like the main writers for that universe, kind of.
Then why did Tsukiyomi create her own world?
Because she's from her own world.
No, she has her own world, and then that other one it was created when she became a Kamen Rider.
Well, like her world was like dying, so it's
and technically. Gates has a world that got erased, and it came from White, and White Waz came from that one.
I thought he was part of like the Geo timeline, just further ahead in the timeline. Also, where did these rider belts come from? To be honest, did they all come from Waz's butt? Like,
no, they came from the pillow.
Okay,
I don't know. A lot of the show was trying to figure itself out. And it never lined up. Let's talk about
the things.
Are we done with Waz?
I guess like there's not much to say. Like everybody likes him. We still love him. Yeah. Like there's some weird things with this character, but who cares?
You can't go wrong with Waz. And also, you know who else you can't go wrong with? The uncle. And really, is there more to say? He's just the most wholesome guy. He's just hoping his nephew does well.
Yeah, and like those jabs he has at Sogo out of nowhere. He's just like, he's always like a super positive dude, but then when he tells Sogo to just like get a job out of nowhere, like the way Sogo deflects it,
Don't worry, I am about to get a job as king.
Yeah, like those are top tier moments, and I think
Yeah.
like the uncle really helped um the show kind of find its footholding in like the comedy at least, because that was one thing that I really liked about the series as a whole. Like when they decided to go with the comedy route, they were pretty solid the entire way, just because
Yeah.
like the actors were charming in that regard. Like
Yeah.
despite how like hard, like how anal like gays would be, he still knew how to like do the comedic stuff. And Schwartz, jeez, you could not get any other person to look at ice cream better than he could.
Right? All right, let's move over to the bad guys, and I just kind of want to lump them together because again, I don't know which name goes to what. We've got and
And Aura. There's probably like another one. Oh yeah, Schwartz.
I don't think the little boy one. He was too like he felt under the thumb too often, and I didn't really understand his reason for staying with them. Like I understood why Schwartz was there and why he would keep around, but I don't know why he stayed around. I don't know what was up with him, what his backstory was to like want to remain there. And we never got the end of it. It was really cool that his tied my jeans was based off of the ghost ship, that iguana ghost ship. I thought that was neat, but it didn't go anywhere. I thought he'd have some sort of past in that era.
Yeah.
But there was nothing. And then Aura, she was duplicitous for no reason. And when she died, she passed that duplicitous off to Tsukiyomi, and it effectively ruined that part of the Tsukiyomi character.
Yeah. And I hated the Time Jackers the entire series through. Mostly because they were like the pivot for the entire plot of the series, and we never knew why they existed, what they were doing, and with their like really busted powers, why they didn't just like do everything themselves, so to speak.
Because they were afraid people could dodge their time slowing abilities. I don't know. It's weird that you can dodge time stopping.
Yeah, and it's like time stopping, not like the slowdown for like drive,
Yeah,
or at least have like some reaction.
yeah,
It's like
that
not
was like an area of effect sort of situation. I guess you can't really dodge those, but like, where do you direct time? I guess Tsukiyomi put time into like a funnel and stabbed Schwartz with it, but whatever.
Yeah, and then like, what did Ud and like Aura think was gonna be like happening the entire like time? I think they were going along the ride with Schwartz because he would get like the powers or something, and or create a timeline that's not the Omagio timeline. I think they wanted
Because like
they wanted someone else to be king.
Yeah, I thought all of them would choose champions. Like I never thought that they were on the same side, and they were like just sort of competing to find, oh hey, who can I put in a suit and make the king instead with these powers?
Yeah, like it feels like that was like a plot they just like decided not to go with because it just didn't make much sense, and it was just not as compelling. Because I remember just like going through the works with like some of those characters and like resolving like the conflicts in like each of those episodes. They were very shallow. Nobody cared, and they just kind of like ended, you know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I guess those two were really casualties of them pushing the story aside because they didn't give them enough time.
yeah,
Which, again, in the service of the anniversary aspect, I guess I'm fine with it.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, in retrospect, I'm fine if we had two nothing characters that eventually became nothing.
Yeah,
In order to service the plot or the enjoyment of the series.
yeah. It sucked that they wanted Uru's death to like mean something, but at that point, like I know
Yeah.
like Soga's a nice guy, so we kind of cared, but
Well, I see. I was affected by the death because I thought was finally going in an interesting way, especially with Aura, because those two had been under Schwartz's thumb for so long, and the fact that those two stuck together, even though she wasn't really the best partner for him, like I thought those two would work well to sort of get out of that, I guess, abusive relationship.
yeah. Speaking of Aura, I mean, you already like made note of her duplicity and all that stuff, but like, she was one of those characters that just didn't want to be on the show. And then she found Decade, and she's like, I guess I'll be part of his show. And then like Decade's like just took a hiatus like after his intro for like probably 10, 15 episodes. He would occasionally make cameos in like Tsukiyomi's like random adventure, but then he just kind of like go off on his own.
Mhm.
And so like that relationship didn't work out. So she's kind of like dumped in like this like at the end of the series, just kind of like doing nothing,
Yeah,
kind of getting backstabbed, kind of not getting backstabbed.
and
But
then
one thing
doing
I
the backstabbing, and then oh, it wasn't her, and then oh wait, it really will be her eventually.
yeah, that Roy Nude switch up was actually pretty badass, and I was actually like surprised that they were immune to the time stopping powers. That was like you would think that the time stopping would override the time slowdown, but uh, I don't mind
Like
that buff.
I gotta say, this show was effective in giving us some nifty what ifs. Like, oh hey, what if you go back and try to get the Ryuki powers, but since his show happened, he doesn't have them? What are you gonna do? And they actually sort of followed through with that. What if don't have any other sort of examples of it, but I'm sure there are some. I guess what happened with Fives? Nothing. Why did that one turn into the other one? That
Nobody
was weird.
knows. When Sogo got the ride watch, the original rider wouldn't have their powers, but towards the end of the series, nobody cared.
Well, like that's because they took it after, like they took their powers after the wait. No, when you take the powers at all, it erases them from
All right, so Schwartz, uh,
Schwartz.
what a lovable shower curtain. Uh, he
Yeah.
was. Uh, he's a weird character for me. He's a good villain, but a terrible antagonist.
Explain. Yeah.
Uh,
Oh wait, I understand. Yeah, it took me a
yeah,
second. Yeah, I get you.
like his villainous aspects, like he's very manipulative. Like his ambitions are kind of like petty and still like evil in their own regard. He's trying to manipulate Soga to take all the rider powers and steal it for himself to outdo like his sister who's born to be better than him. And he also has like some sort of noble purpose. He wants to kind of it's I guess it wasn't noble because he wanted to destroy all the worlds because his world wasn't functioning. So yeah, in that
Yeah.
way, he's a really. I thought he was
No,
trying to
I
say,
must have more carousels.
yeah. So in that regard, he has like the makings of a really good villain. But when it actually came to like him being, an opposing force to Sogo in the game, he just decided that he was only gonna do things until it became like Omagio, which it's like towards the end of the series when he gets all the powers for it, like, and he's been there from like episode 1, so you can't really just sit around doing nothing. And despite like losing so many ride watches, despite losing so many of like the so-called like future kings, They
Yeah.
picked a lot of people to be the new kings instead of Sogo, and for them to like all fail and you do not care like one bit for as long as you did, just we're tired of seeing that. So can
Yeah,
you like
that's true.
and can you at least like put pressure on like Soga and the gang like to make them actually be kind of scared? Like
Mhm.
even like X8 had like Kronos and or even Palad, you know, like they were doing some nefarious stuff with like the world. Like you had to stop them or else something was gonna go wrong. Like
See, I feel like with his character, it would have made sense and would have really helped Aura and if he actually like wrote them in on what was going on. But I feel like even the writers didn't know what was going on, so they just sort of left it for the end. And then they realized, oh, okay, so this is his motivation now. Doesn't really line up with everything from before, but this is what we're going with. And really, again, he's just another casualty of turning it into mostly an anniversary series. And they landed with his character, kind of. Like he was enjoyable more times. He was enjoyable as many times as he wasn't.
yeah, and like I usually like put a lot of weight on like whether I like a series like on the villain and the antagonist, 'cause kind of like shapes like what the hero has to do to meet that.
Mm.
And for Schwartz, like despite how bad of an antagonist he was, he's very weak in that regard. Like I still don't consider him like all too terrible for myself, just because of like the effort the actor put into this role. Because like
Yeah.
for me, like if it wasn't him, he wouldn't be nearly as likable. And I feel
Hmm.
like because he at least managed to, you know, garner some of that from the audience, at least
Hmm.
for me,
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
just like, you know what, I'm fine with him being on screen. Like even if like the writing isn't with him, he's at least like putting on performance for the audience and at least, you know, giving us like some of these moments, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's
Like
commendable.
when like push comes to shove, like he's basking in like the moment of his glory. He's like, "Ha! I'm getting all the powers. I got the decayed powers. I'm gonna screw up this world." Brings up like the Futo like tower, like the Idricel stuff, like Skywall,
Yeah.
and he's like taunting Soga the entire time. He's like, "Ha ha! I did this. You guys suck. Took your powers. Took your powers. I'm gonna rule it all." And when he gets kicked in the face, it's glorious. So
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. And then it's glorious, and then they cut to Tsukiyomi and him just off to the side as spirits for
just
some reason.
just yin yanging it, as you said.
Yeah. Um, and also I feel like we can briefly touch on Decade and uh
The end.
the end. Yeah. Um, Decade was always fun. He was figuring out the plot as it was going because so were the writers, and he was enjoyable. Like it's sort of the same thing with what you were saying with Schwartz. But since we knew him, he already had that likability. We were already on his side in terms of like trying to like him. And the goofy things he was doing off screen and on screen were like just that much more enjoyable.
Yeah, like
The end was there.
yeah, I'm glad
You
that
could safely
he.
say he was there.
Yeah, they're like a huge bromance in the series. So you know,
Definitely. Good time.
uh, yeah, like for me, it's surprising like how likable Decade was, just because he has so much charisma.
Mm-hmm.
Like the actor and like the character itself just kind of like they just work really well together.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like
But
when he
like
got
I feel like the moment he got off of the set for Decade, he never stopped playing Decade. The dude always just was Decade. He like carried a card around with him too.
yeah, like
Yeah.
uh, for an anniversary writer to come be part of another anniversary writer's show, especially like as big as a role as he did. Like I mean, he didn't really have much like plot relevance because all he did was kind of like show it instead of like participating in it all too much. He was like great and like we're kind of like happy seeing he's like, yeah, this guy's like the experienced anniversary writer. He's like, I
He's gone through the crappy show. Here to
Yeah.
bring you more of it. Still trying to figure out his show, trying to figure out your show. It's a bad time for him.
Yeah, and like he can just like show up and it's like, okay, when he just like shows up in any scene, he just like owns it in his own way, and he can do whatever the heck he wants, and it would still be entertaining.
Like, dude made bread interesting.
Oh my god, the way he was just like eating that thing, I was just like all over that scene. It's like, dang, that looks like some good ass bread.
That's some interesting bread that he's eating.
And then like in the middle of the series where like, Aura was trying to, do stuff with Decade, he was just messing with her that entire time. He's all like, what is this irrelevant character? Why is she in my presence? I'll just play along. He's like, I got a plan. I'm gonna sit on my ass and eat here. You just kind of like dawdle around me. She's just like, are you gonna do anything yet? He's just like, yeah. He just still sits there. It's like... All right.
Yeah. All right. Shoot. What more is there to say about Geo? Really?
Yeah. Like,
I mean, final thoughts are just like, watch it if you watch
I feel like
episodes with the writers that you know.
Yeah, the enjoyment definitely scales with the amount of writers you're, acquainted with, basically. Like, if you watch a bunch of the other shows, you're gonna like it a lot more. But if you're like somebody like, Michael usually watches like a lot of Tokyo shows with us, but he didn't watch this one because he just didn't know most of the writers, so he didn't enjoy it as much.
Yeah.
So, like, this is definitely not.
But I have seen people say that this is one of their first writer series and got them excited to watch others. So there's something to be said about that aspect. At a base level, I feel like a lot of it's enjoyable, and sort of what I liked about Decade is that, it was an anniversary series, and it sort of like showed aspects of these characters that I thought were really cool, and I knew there was weight behind these names. And in a way, this sort of acts as that, but I don't have that lens to view it under. But I just know that people have experienced this as one of their first and have enjoyed it. So I can't necessarily say don't watch this if you haven't watched Rider, because I have two reactions to it of, wow, really don't like it, or wow, really like all these cool people,
Yeah, because like there was like definitely some writers that we didn't see, like Agito, just like, shoot, I kind of is interested in all that stuff.
I mean, I'm really not interested in Agito, but G3, oh man, dude's got my number.
Yeah, like the worlds that it introduces us to is kind of like great in its own regard.
Yeah.
But it depends. Like if you like Geo and you can kind of like follow it, him on his journey, you'll meet like a bunch of like neat writers, and you might be interested in their shows and see where that takes you as well. So
that's true. Yeah. So I mean, like, par for the course for anniversary series, I guess, in terms of like, if you want to slightly know about these guys, take a look at this, get a little bit of flavor. Oh my god, my phone's blowing up. Okay, yeah, I mean, not Gokaiger good, because that one actually handled like getting people at the last second really well. You know what I mean? And then this one just sort of fumbled around with like, oh shoot, we don't know what to do. It's like, Gokaiger really didn't have a complicated story. It just had strong characters and like a direction. But here, it's just like, we don't know what we're doing. We want a really complicated plot, but like we can't get all the pieces together in the right order, so we're just gonna do something.
Right, no joke. Like the plot for Gokaiger was 3 asses to kick and like a treasure to find.
Like it was the a very simplistic plot that was conducive to change on the fly. This was too like stuck in what it wanted to do, and it wasn't as flexible, and it just sort of broke under the pressure.
Yeah.
But it was a good thing. I love watching things break. That's neat.
Yeah.
But it was an elaborate explosion of different pieces that should not have tried to come together.
Yeah.
Cool. Alex, do you have anything else you want to say about Geo?
Yeah. His final hench was badass. At least in like the the last episode. Whew.
Touch the two fishies on his belt and then
I've only got more of that though.
Oh yeah, I know.
I'll eat all that up.
Anything else?
Nope.
Alright, cool. So guys, thanks for watching. If you like this episode, hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear more from us each week. Tell us in the comments down below what you thought about Geo as a whole. And also the I can't really say that watch along is up at the same time. No, technically, you know what? The entirety of our watch alongs are up for this. So I don't know. Watch them, I guess. I don't know if you want to spend that much time doing that. Hey, also, I'm doing a bunch of time lapses for Tokutember. If you want to take a look at the my drawing process, it's up, and I put it to some royalty-free music. Apparently, Alex didn't like the music I chose for this first one, but hopefully this next one will be good. I don't know. And then also, Soda Pop is back on its own channel. So please go over there and support it because we're bringing new content to it. Working real hard to really up our game there because I really love Soda Pop and I hope you guys will check it out. We've got some... It's a good time to jump on because we got some brand new 01 stuff and, you know, just Soda's a good time. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Keep it juicy.
Yep. See ya.
We're done until the movies.
Yep.
I've done so many videos today. I'm tired of content creating, but I'm gonna have to do so much of it tomorrow.